The girl by the fence. The prairie wind carried a dry whisper across the hills, brushing through the tall grass like a sigh from something half asleep. The sun was beginning its slow dip behind the distant ridges, painting the sky with soft streaks of rose and gold. To a man like Elias Boone, silence had long been a companion, comforting, predictable, and mercifully empty. He rode with the kind of ease that comes from years of repetition, boots creaking against the stirrups, reins slack in his roughened hand. His horse, an old gray named Dusty, moved steady toward the line fence marking the edge of Boone Ranch. Elias had gone to town that morning for supplies and the mail. He hadn't spoken more than 10 words all day. But as he reached the bend by Miller's Creek, he spotted movement, a flicker of motion that didn't belong. A little figure stood by the weathered fence post, clutching something small and wrapped in cloth. When the figure turned, Elias saw her face. She couldn't have been more than 8. Her brown hair hung loose, tangled by the wind, and her eyes, dark and wide, watched him not with fear, but with something deeper. A kind of pleading that hit him straight in the chest. "Evenin', kid," Elias said softly, slowing Dusty to a stop. "You lost." The girl shook her head, hugging the bundle closer. "No, sir. I was waitin'." "For who?" She looked at him for a long moment before answering. "For you." Elias blinked. He dismounted slowly, boots sinking in the dust. "For me? You sure about that?" The girl nodded, her small chin trembling. "You're Mr. Boone, ain't you? The quiet rancher? Mama said if things ever got bad, I should come here. Said you were a good man once." Her voice cracked on that last word. Elias's throat tightened. He studied the child, confused, cautious. "Your mama? Who's your mama, girl?" She took a shaky step forward, unwrapping the bundle she held. Inside was a faded locket, a few biscuits, and a letter folded so many times it was almost soft as cloth. She handed it up to him. Elias took it, recognizing the handwriting before he even opened it. Clara Whitlow. He hadn't heard that name in nearly a decade. A woman he'd known when he still believed in things like laughter and forever. He read the letter in silence. Each word pulled at something buried deep. "Elias, if this reaches you, it means I'm gone. My little girl, Annie, has no one else. I remembered how you once said you'd never let a soul go hungry if it was in your power to help. I'm asking that of you now. She's good, Elias. She's my whole heart. Please, don't let her end up alone." When he finished, his hands were trembling. The girl, Annie, stood still, watching his face as though she already knew what it said. He cleared his throat roughly. "Your ma, she's—" Annie's lips pressed together. She nodded, once. "She got sick. The preacher said she's with the angels now." Elias looked away, jaw tightening. He had no words for grief, he'd buried too much of it already. For a while, only the wind spoke between them. Then Annie whispered, barely loud enough for him to hear. "Please, Mr. Boone, please marry my mama." The words caught him off guard. "What?" She blinked up at him, tears shining in her lashes. "Please marry my mama. She's all I got now." Elias's heart gave a hard, painful thump. The child didn't understand. She was too young to know her mother was beyond any vows now. He knelt down, voice gentler than it had been in years. "Your mama's gone, sweetheart. I can't." "But you can take care of me," she interrupted. "Mama said if a man ever truly loved her, he'd be kind to her little girl, too." He froze. The look in her eyes, hope wrapped in fear, was the same one Clara used to have when she tried to smile through hard times. "Please, Mr. Boone," Annie whispered again, gripping the hem of his coat. "I ain't got nowhere else to go." Elias swallowed. His ranch was quiet, too quiet. It had been that way since his wife and baby died 3 winters ago. He'd sealed that part of his heart shut like a boarded window. But now, this small, trembling girl stood there, and somehow she'd found the latch. He took a slow breath. "You hungry, Annie?" Her eyes flickered, uncertain. Then she nodded. "Then let's start there," he said, lifting her onto Dusty's back. "We'll talk about the rest after supper." Inside the Boone ranch house, the air smelled faintly of wood smoke and dust. The long table sat empty, the hearth cold. Elias hadn't lit it in days. He set Annie's bundle down, hung his hat, and went about lighting the fire. She wandered behind him silently, touching the worn edges of the furniture, tracing the carved initials on the mantel, E and M, once for Elias and Mary. "Was this your wife?" she asked softly. He glanced at her, surprised by how direct she was. "Yeah. A long time ago. Did she go to the angels too?" His breath caught. "Yes," he said finally. "Her and our baby." Annie's little shoulders sank. "I'm sorry, Mr. Boone." He nodded once, unable to say more. He busied himself with the stew pot, pouring her a bowl of beans and potatoes. She ate slowly at first, then hungrily, like someone who hadn't known a real meal in days. When she was done, she folded her hands neatly in her lap, just like Clara used to do after supper. Elias stared at the fire for a long time before speaking. "You can sleep in the spare room tonight. We'll figure out what to do tomorrow." Annie hesitated. "You won't send me away, will you?" He met her eyes. "No, not tonight." She nodded, though she didn't seem entirely convinced. As she settled into the small bed, Elias stood in the doorway, watching. The moonlight caught in her hair, and for a heartbeat, he could almost see Clara there. Soft smile, tired eyes, the woman who'd once loved him before fate turned cruel. He whispered under his breath, "I'll keep her safe, Clara. I swear it." The next morning, the ranch woke to the sound of new life. Annie was already outside feeding the chickens with a focus and care that made Elias pause. She wore one of Mary's old aprons tied twice around her tiny waist. "You're up early," he said, coming down the steps. She grinned shyly. "The hens were noisy. Mama said it means they're talkin' to the sun." He couldn't help but chuckle, a sound so rare it startled even him. Days passed, then weeks. Annie brought with her a warmth the ranch hadn't known in years. She sang softly while she worked, helped mend old curtains, even convinced Elias to fix the rocking chair on the porch. But every night before bed, she'd whisper the same thing to him, in her small, sleepy voice. "Please marry my mama, Mr. Boone. She's all I got now." And each time, he'd answer gently, "I already did, sweetheart, in all the ways that matter." What he didn't say, what he couldn't, was that in taking care of Annie, he'd begun to remember what living felt like again. But out here on the frontier, peace never lasted long. Because one dusty afternoon, a rider appeared on the horizon. He wasn't from these parts, and the look in his eyes spelled trouble. He carried papers with Clara Whitlow's name on them, and a claim to Annie that could tear her away from everything she'd begun to call home. The claim and the promise. The sound of hooves broke the quiet afternoon. Elias Boone stepped off the porch, hand resting near the old colt on his belt. Annie was kneeling in the garden, humming to the hens, unaware of the dust rising on the horizon. The rider came fast, too fast for a man with good intentions. When he stopped, the horse snorted and pawed at the ground, nostrils flaring. The man dismounted in a swirl of trail dust, his boots polished, his coat too fine for a rancher. "Elias Boone?" the stranger asked, voice sharp, Eastern accent cutting through the dry air. "That's me," Elias said, calm but cautious. "Who's a skin?" The man reached into his coat, pulling out a packet of folded papers. "Name's Harland Dorsey. I'm executor for the late Clara Whitlow's estate. There's unfinished business, specifically the matter of her child." Annie froze where she knelt, turning slowly. Elias stepped down, jaw tightening. "You mean Annie?" Dorsey nodded briskly. "The same. Legally, she's to be transferred into the care of her late father's brother in Kansas. I'm here to collect her and deliver her safely." "Her father's brother?" Elias repeated. "That man hasn't written Clara once in 10 years. He didn't even show at her funeral." "That's irrelevant," Dorsey said, straightening his hat. "I'm here under authority of the county court. The girl goes with me." Elias felt something dark rise inside him, the same cold anger that had carried him through the worst of his life. He took a slow step forward, voice low. "The girl's safe here. She's got food, a roof, and someone who gives a damn whether she wakes up scared in the night." Dorsey smirked faintly. "A rancher's charity doesn't outweigh the law, Mr. Boone." From behind Elias, Annie's small voice trembled. "I don't want to go, Mr. Boone. Please don't let him take me." That sound, her fear, broke something in him. He turned fully to Dorsey. "You tell that court she's stayin' right here till I speak to them myself. You can ride back and wait." Dorsey's expression hardened. "You're obstructing a legal order." "Then you'd better get used to it." Elias's hand hovered near his holster, not in threat, but as a promise. Dorsey read it clear enough. He turned his horse with a huff of contempt and rode off toward town, muttering something about warrants and fools. When the dust settled, Annie ran to Elias, clutching his waist. "Are they gonna take me, Mr. Boone?" He placed a hand on her head, voice steady but tight. "Not if I can help it, Annie. Not ever." That night, the ranch was heavy with silence. The wind outside moaned through the cracks like an omen. Elias sat by the fire, staring at the letter Clara had written, her last words, her last plea. Don't let her end up alone. He had promised. He looked over at Annie, curled up under a quilt on the couch. Her thumb rested near her cheek, her breathing soft and even. For the first time in years, something inside him felt alive again, fragile but real. He whispered to the flames, "Clara, I'll make it right. I'll give her your name, and mine." Morning came cold and gray. Elias saddled Dusty before sunrise and packed a small satchel. Annie blinked awake at the sound, confusion clouding her eyes. "Where you goin'?" she asked sleepily. "To town," he said, kneeling to her level. "I gotta talk to that judge before Mr. Dorsey does." "Can I come?" He hesitated. "It's a long ride, Annie." She straightened, chin firm in a way that reminded him so much of Clara that his chest hurt. "I ain't lettin' you go alone." He smiled faintly. "All right then, partner. Let's ride." The courthouse in Dry Creek was a squat brick building that had seen better days. When Elias walked in with Annie at his side, conversation stopped. Dusty ranchers and townsfolk alike turned to look. Judge Harriet O'Connell sat behind the desk, spectacles low on her nose. She was small, sharp-eyed, and known for scaring sense into bigger men than Elias. "Mr. Boone," she said dryly, "you've been accused of keeping a child against a lawful custody order. Care to explain?" Elias nodded once. "Yes, ma'am. I'm not keepin' her, I'm raisin' her. Her mother asked me to, in writin'. You've got the letter in your papers, I expect." The judge rifled through a stack, frowning. "I do. It's emotional, but not legally binding. Miss Whitlow named no guardian." "She trusted me," Elias said quietly, "and I gave her my word." Dorsey, sitting smugly on the bench, cut in. "Promises made over campfires don't hold up in court, Boone. Family law does. The uncle's entitled to guardianship." Elias turned to him, his voice low and steady as a storm. "That man left Clara to die broke and sick, and now he wants her daughter for a few dollars of inheritance money." Gasps rippled through the room. The judge's eyes flicked toward Dorsey, who shifted uneasily. Elias stepped closer to the bench. "I ain't a skin for money, ma'am. Just the right to keep her safe. If there's papers to sign, I'll sign 'em. If there's oaths to take, I'll take 'em. But I won't let her be dragged halfway across the country by men who don't care if she cries at night." The judge stared at him for a long, tense silence. Then Annie stepped forward, voice soft but clear. "Please, Your Honor, I want to stay with Mr. Boone. He's my family now." It wasn't loud, but it hit the room like a prayer. Judge O'Connell's stern features softened. She leaned back, sighing. "You're a stubborn man, Mr. Boone. Maybe that's exactly what this girl needs." She lifted her pen. "I'm granting provisional guardianship to Elias Boone until further review. The court will revisit in 6 months." Annie gasped, tears bright in her eyes. Dorsey rose, sputtering. "That's irregular." "Sit down, Mr. Dorsey," the judge snapped. "Irregular doesn't mean wrong. You'll get your papers in the morning." Elias tipped his hat slightly. "Thank you, ma'am." Annie ran to him, arms around his middle. "Does this mean I get to stay?" she whispered. He smiled down at her. "Reckon it does." That night, the ranch felt different. The air seemed warmer, the rooms less empty. Annie helped set the table, and Elias found himself lighting 2 candles instead of 1. When supper was done, she looked up at him shyly. "Mr. Boone." "Yeah, Annie." She fiddled with the locket around her neck, her mother's. "When the judge said you're my guardian, does that mean you're kinda my papa now?" The question broke the last bit of distance between them. Elias reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yeah, sweetheart. Guess it does." Her eyes shimmered. "Moma'd be happy about that." He swallowed hard, voice low. "I hope so." Annie climbed into his lap, resting her head against his chest. "Then, can I still say it? What I used to?" He smiled faintly. "What's that?" She whispered, the same words that had first broken his heart and rebuilt it again. "Please marry my mama, Mr. Boone. She's all I got now." Elias looked toward the window, where the moonlight touched the portrait of his late wife, and for a strange, quiet moment, it felt like Clara Whitlow was there too, smiling from somewhere unseen. He wrapped his arms around the little girl and said softly, "I already did, Annie. In every way that counts." Outside, the wind shifted, no longer lonely, but alive with something that almost felt like peace.